how do we go multi-cloud? Is it possible to say, I want a single data platform that spans all of my clouds, that positions me differently?
You're listening to Data Revolution,
the show about data, innovation, and economics in the rapidly changing cloud world. So, Jenke, I heard that you spent some time with Stu, which is the VP of our sales, and also with Bob, which is the head of Aiven platform. Can you tell us a little bit more about what we can expect from this episode?
Yeah, definitely. It was a great conversation. We covered a lot of topics. The main topic that we really started with was how organizations approach their data platform strategy. And then we went into enterprise readiness and bring your own cloud and what that means at Aiven. So I'm really excited for people to listen to it. Also, what was really fun was that Bob, he's on the product side, like you said, and then Stu being on the sales side. It was interesting to see their perspectives from building something and then how it's being received from different people across the world. So I think people are really going to like the discussion that we had.
Well, that sounds really exciting. I can't wait to check it out.
Thank you both for sitting down with me. I'd like to start out with asking what your roles are.
Fantastic. So, Stu Garrow, I run the Asia Pacific business for Aiven.
Yeah, so I'm Bob Kragowski. I am responsible for the platform here at Aiven, so both product management and engineering.
So we'll be talking about platform strategies, enterprise readiness, and how organizations think about it. But I'd love to first hear in 2 words, what comes to mind when you hear data platform strategy?
Sure, I can do that in 1 word.
Okay.
And my word is trust. And so when I think about putting myself in the place of somebody who's building a data platform strategy, and I think about how they're going to build it, and they think about, can I do everything myself or do I need to work with a partner? They need to have a high level of trust that the partner, like Aiven, has really thought through things like, how do they help me to go to market with my customer? I'm going to be building something that is likely a production environment for my customer. How do they trust that it's going to perform well? How do they trust that it's going to be compliant? How do I trust that my users can use it and be secure and maintain my existing policies? So there's a lot of levels of trust that really need to be there in order for me to not only build out my data strategy, but how do I deploy that to my customers, internal or external? So I may be working in a regulated environment. I need to trust that my partner has got my back.
And along with that, communication is a huge part of that trust too. So what about you, Stu?
I think for me, my 2 words would be multiple initiatives. So as we think about a platform as opposed to data services, data tools, data technologies versus a data platform, to me it really comes down to multiple initiatives. When an organization takes a sort of bubble approach, maybe it's at a project level that says they have one technology that they're looking at, what tends to happen is you can end up with many initiatives or many projects through an organization, all making different technology decisions, and things start to break down. And I think, to reflect on what Bob said, you think that trust starts to go away at that point. It's sort of only that initiative as a bubble will have that. As we move to a platform approach, what you're looking for is multiple initiatives all on the same platform. The platform concept is really as much, it's a mindset as anything else. It says when you think of this as a platform and think, how do I get data throughout my organization sitting on top of one platform, so that, as Bob said, we can have that trust built into it, that I've got accessibility, I've got access to the right data at the right time, in the right place, in the right way, and it's secured and compliant, things like that. But it all comes down to whether I've got multiple initiatives all sitting on top. Because what happens is, as I've seen it, many organizations, once they'll start that journey and they'll put 3 initiatives on top of the same data platform, the organization adopts it as a platform approach. And at that point, the 4th, 5th, 6th, 10th, nth, 100th initiative, and ends up landing on that same platform. And at that point, the set of benefits that come from the platform become exponential right throughout the organization in many different ways. And so it brings really back to my 2 words would be multiple initiatives.
Yeah, no, exactly. And when you think about data platform strategy, there's multiple initiatives, and that can be tenfold when the company is growing fast, they're global, et cetera. You just have so many things going on, and trust and having everything going on at the same time. You really need to think about what you're going to do as an organization.
Well, I think as you bring it up, it's really not one aspect that you're trying to fix. And it's data platforms really have a series of different issues, and you're trying to fix all of them at the same time, which becomes complex. How do I make sure that I have the trust, that I can move quickly, that I'm doing it economically and I can save money for the organization in doing that? How do I simplify compliance? And you take each of these sort of security, compliance, cost, people, training, skills, all of these problems, and when you break them up into pieces and say, if I don't have a platform approach, any one of these problems will start and derail the organization. They'll take you off, and you'll be trying to solve compliance in many different ways, in many different initiatives. When you start and take a platform approach, the efficiencies start and kick in. Not just money. It is money, it's people, it's time, it's speed, it's all of these things start to become much simpler. And this is where an organization, in my experience, will get those real benefits starting to come in. But it requires that sponsorship for an organization in wanting to do that. Someone has to step up and say, this is something we need to do, because if you let initiatives drive that from below, you're going to end up in a very different position. You're going to end up with all these silos and bubbles that have tried to solve problems differently every time.
Yeah, 100%. I've seen that. And then companies start building center of excellence teams so that they can get everyone moving in the right direction.
If I could, Junkie, you raised a really interesting one around the center of excellence. It's interesting, I think, how we've looked at that problem. And as organizations go down this path, the center of excellence, which is really trying to create that centralized team where you can sometimes, as you're trying to get scale and speed, that center of excellence can sometimes be the bottleneck, that you'll have, an ivory tower of experts. And so I think one of the things that we've seen in order to scale and get this across an organization at scale is taking the sort of center for enablement approach that says, how do I take that group of really smart people and distribute them across the organization to say, what I need to do is get adoption of the platform, because we know if we can take a platform approach, I can get speed and efficiency and security and compliance and time and money. I can actually fix a number of these issues. And so inverting that COE kind of model is one of the strategies that we've certainly seen to help scale out organizations.
I'm glad you went into that, because there's companies or organizations that they're for it, or maybe it's not working either. So they need to think of something different to do so that they can get going, right? So I know both of you are leaders at Aiven, because I work there as well. And we talked about high level just now about data platform strategy. So I wanted to dive in more about how you think about it at Aiven. And maybe we can start from a product strategy standpoint, if that works for you.
Sure, yeah. So when we think about the Aiven platform as a product, we're really thinking about it as an enabler for how do we help all of the products that customers buy and they use and they build into their existing platforms, into their data platform, their data strategy. We think about the platform really needs to be an enabler for those teams. So we think about when we meet with customers, we talk to them about how they're building their own applications, where they want to go, where their customers are, what their SLAs are, what their resilience strategy looks like. And we try to take all of those factors into consideration when we start to build out our components. We prioritize the things that help us to modernize our platform, help us to help customers tackle new and different workloads, new application types. You probably hear a lot from us today around AI. The platform is going to play a role with that. And really how customers want to get value out of Aiven. So we incorporate a lot of those factors into our product development strategy and our vision.
A question I have based on that is, when you said AI capabilities, I know that's really hot right now. So how are you doing that for the platform that you're working on right now?
We have opportunities to think about, like, we support over 100,000 nodes within our organization. We have a lot of data, a lot of opportunity to say we can add value to customers who may just want us to make smart decisions about instances to gain better availability or higher performance or better resiliency. We're going to take a look at how AI can help us in that area to get better efficiency and then to deliver better value. Say even things like stronger SLAs or better reporting. We want to be able to make AI meaningful for our customers.
Actually, I wanted to ask another question as you were talking about the scale and all the data on Aiven's platform. One thing that stood out to me was the BYOC, which is Bring Your Own Cloud. I thought that was really unique, and I would love for you to dive into what that is, because I don't feel that's something very common.
Many of our customers, the larger enterprise customers, have come to us in the past and said, I'm interested in Aiven. My problem, my challenge is I already have big relationships with one of the hyperscalers. How can you help me to maximize the discount that I already have, my negotiated discount? How can you help me use that on Aiven? How can you help me burn that down faster or consume my committed spend faster? And so that was one of the problems that they came to us with. And they also bought in on the vision that we had with them to say, from a platform perspective, I have the ability to now consider multiple clouds, consider a portfolio of services, and leverage all these capabilities to say, I can build a consistent developer experience, but can you do that all on my cloud, in my account? That's really how Bring Your Own Cloud was born, that idea was born. We did some manual projects for our customers, and then just last year, we started to do more of a productization effort. We saw that it was ready. There were enough customers who said they needed it. And essentially, we've built the automation that allows us to build a custom environment within a customer's AWS, GCP, Azure account, and even an OCI account. And it allows us to extend the Aiven platform to a certain extent into the customer's cloud account. And we can create a secure environment. We can leverage the customer's existing security controls and governance. And it allows them to just simply then go buy Aiven the way they normally would. And it's secure, it's on their account, it's leveraging their spend commitments, and we provide the same operational capability, the same SLAs, and the same developer tools, developer experience.
And a lot of these groups, they are on multiple vendors. And I'd love to hear, I mean, I'm not in those calls all the time. I'm not in the sales organization, but Stu, I'd love to hear how those conversations are going in the industry right now and what you're seeing.
Yeah, just to reflect on what Bob said, it's exactly it. I mean, at a simple level, it can be driven, though the BYOC can be driven by one of a number of things, but usually they're interconnected. Often it is the security bubble. At the end of the day, you could have the greatest technical solution for a problem, but if you can't get through security and compliance, at the end of the day, that's never going to happen. And so it often will start with cost is a supporting thing that they can save money if they've been able to negotiate amazing cloud kind of costs with their cloud provider. However, sometimes it's security and compliance that says, if you could run inside my security bubble and instead of alongside and connected to my security bubble, then that makes my life so much easier. And so when you start by that, supported by a set of cost savings and simplicity for the organization. But to go back to it, I think what we're seeing today, we engage with a lot of executives and we get a lot of CXO level engagement from the top of an organization and the interconnected set of challenges. One of the real changes that's happening in the industry today is really the move to multi-cloud. And multi-cloud has become a really significant issue driven by compliance in a number of countries. I know from my own experience out of the UK, out of Australia, Indonesia, Thailand, there's many countries now have laws controlling sort of critical organizations, often driven by financial services, insurance, things like that, where a country may determine that they can't afford their financial institutions to have downtime. And so they're requiring organizations to go multi-cloud. Now, this is not multiple clouds. This is multi-cloud, which means the ability to transparently operate across different clouds. And I think that change in the industry has been a really big thing that is driving a lot of change today. because some of it is the commoditization of cloud. I mean, as you know, when we go back 10 years ago, when we think about, you know, there was a much smaller number of cloud options, you know, and going cloud meant one of a couple of organizations that you would go with. Today, there are dozens and dozens of cloud offerings at the tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 level. There's different cloud options different countries have. And so as organizations move to, I could save 50% on my cloud costs if I could move from one cloud to another. But do I have the ability? And so organizations are coming to this really significant challenge that if I go proprietary down a single cloud and I use a bunch of proprietary services, I get stuck. Now I have this compliance requirement. Now, whether for our customers, some customers see it as we are controlled by this compliance, we have to go down this path. How do I do it and save money and save, you know, get my security done easier and not have to retrain my people, and this set of integrated challenges, that it becomes a difficult problem, right? And this is not one that many organizations have been able to solve. But if you're able to solve it and move to this more of a cloud portability in terms of setting your organization up that says the initiatives you have today and the ones that will come over the next 5 years, if you have cloud portability, now I have the ability to save money. If someone walks in and said, hey, if you move to my cloud, I can save you, you know, X amount. This can be one of the biggest single line items that any CIO is signing off on at the moment, is what they're spending on their cloud. And so if I have cloud portability, now I have the ability to use that commoditization to my advantage. Because at the end of the day, none of us will ever have enough budget and enough money. And the really cool stuff that's happening in the industry today around things like AI require real investment. There are some amazing technologies out there. Each of the cloud providers will give you some unique features and capabilities that will really drive your AI initiative. But if you've just not got the budget because you're spending too much on commoditized cloud services, then now you're stuck in a hole. And so this, to me, is one of the biggest challenges we're seeing organizations coming to us saying, how do we go multi-cloud? Is it possible to say, I want a single data platform that spans all of my clouds, that positions me differently, right? And this is where, for me, I mean, it moves back to open source. Is like the purpose and what's the place of open source in the industry today? And I think that open source has had a rebirth in how important it is as we move to this cloud independence kind of time, where we no longer want to be stuck in one proprietary cloud, that if this kind of compliance suddenly hits your organization and you have to become multi-cloud, then you're going to have a real challenge. Being able to use open source as a way of being across multiple clouds with the same skills. Now it's about people. It's about, can I get the people with generic skills that allow me to operate in any cloud, which reduces my cost, that I can take advantage of the commoditization of cloud to move my budget into the initiatives that matter, the ones that move us up the AI scale, that allow us to use the unique technologies that truly make a difference. And you start and see the complexity of this problem, yet the simplicity of the answer that says, I really need a multi-cloud, open source data platform that would allow me to use the same people, have all the cost and security and compliance advantages that would come from that. And this is a bit of an aha moment for a lot of people as they go down this path. And I think it's a super interesting challenge that Aiven's able to address.
Those are really great points. So I want to ask you in a follow-up question on what you just shared. You walked us through how organizations want to have the flexibility and they might want to be in multiple clouds. What about the opposite end?
Let me unpack that for you. It comes back to a little what I said, this concept of multiple initiatives, right? And it comes all the way back to try and connect things. When we talk about multiple initiatives, there are the initiatives you see today, but a data platform is never a one-year decision. A data platform is a 5, 7, possibly a 10-year decision within an organization. As someone, makes a decision that says strategically we need to set ourselves up in a particular way. Now, what that means is you will know about a number of initiatives today. There are many initiatives you're not going to know about. And each of those initiatives may require different technologies. And each of the vendors that support you, your different cloud providers, may have unique bits of technology. I think what we've seen in the industry is that one cloud provider might have a really specific piece of AI technology, another one has a different set, and they're both useful. And so we return to the basic concept of, first of all, we must free up budget, because if we spend too much money on commoditized cloud services, then what I'm not going to have the budget to be able to move around. Once I have cloud independence, I don't have to just stick to one cloud provider that has one cool piece of capability that would materially move the capability of my organization up the scale. So the way I always look at it is, can I help an organization free up that budget so that they can use a specific service in one cloud that would really change their world, and a specific service out of a different cloud that would materially change their world? They've got the budget, the flexibility, the portability that says, because they run multi-cloud, now they can take a best of breed on the differentiated technologies that will truly move them up the scale. And that's what we're trying to free up organizations. And some of that we can see today, but some of it we have to project out and say, over the next 5 years, there's going to be dramatic change. I mean, what we've seen in the world of AI today, where we are today versus where we were 2 years ago, imagine where we will be 5 years from now. And so as we go through that journey, we're going to need to set people up for that portability, because putting all your eggs in one basket that says, I'm going to bet on one cloud provider that's going to have the best technology in every sector, in every space, for every initiative I need to do for the next 5, 6, 10 years, that's a big bet, right?
Yes.
And statistically, you're probably wrong, right? Because different cloud providers are going to come up with different technologies. They'll do different acquisitions. They'll build different things. And so if you want to hedge your bets and give yourself the portability to take the commoditization to save yourself the budget, and then use that budget to make the difference on whatever technology for whichever initiative makes the difference today that allows you to move. And if that technology is superseded or changed, you'll have the flexibility to move, right, and go somewhere else.
There's two things I wanted to unpack a little bit more that we talked about here. So first is, in order to do that, the reason we got on that track was we talked about bring your own cloud, BYOC. So large organizations, they're very complex, et cetera. How easy is it? And what does that look like from the end user perspective? Because in theory, right, it's wonderful. And yeah, I'm going to go do it. But it can become challenging actually implementing it. So from your experience, like Bob, from the product
Yeah.
side, I know your team is trying to make it self-service, automated. But could you walk us through that a little bit?
Sure. So from the perspective of the customer, what we see is, when we started Bring Your Own Cloud, it was complex. It was really a custom engineering type implementation, a lot of back and forth with the customer to get requirements, and then time, and then engineering work on our side. What we've done at this point is we've tried to automate a lot of what has been a back and forth and complex development. So part of what we've done and what we released earlier this year was a self-service workflow. So the self-service workflow, what it allows is for the customer to say, okay, I've decided that Bring Your Own Cloud is the right answer for me. They've decided where they want their workloads, what cloud and what region, and they can simply start to provide information, a lot of which they would have to do anyways. So it's things like networking information, account level information, user information, because at the end of the day, you're allowing Aiven to operate within your environment, to use Stu's term, which is a great one, that security bubble. You're allowing us into that security bubble. So you often have to have CISO approval, other security and governance approvals. So they have to do that anyways. And so now we're avoiding a lot of the back and forth between our development teams and the customer. It becomes more of a potentially a sales type conversation, an SA, kind of a post-sales conversation to say, now you're ready for this. Let's get all the details identified. Let's make sure that your networking and IP address information is right. And then it becomes a workflow. There's inputs that go into a workflow. It's a relatively short workflow, and we've done some initial benchmarking, looking at the cases where we did it very manually. It could take upwards of 4 weeks to do all the back and forth and then all the development work. And one of the product managers on my team just shared a demo with me last week. He did it in 8 minutes. Now, I know he accelerated that a little bit and everything had to work, but it did. And when things work well, it can be very easy. It can be very straightforward. And he also showed an example of migrating using a self-service workflow into a bring your own cloud environment. And that was pretty cool as well. Like, migrations are not easy. And so doing a demo of showing that work is also pretty cool. The other thing that is cool is if you look at the Aiven console where a customer would interact, and I know some don't interact on the console, but if you did, you can see that bring your own cloud environment is just another environment. It's another region underneath the cloud provider. So it's a very, the very simple way that customers can create an account, creating a bring your own cloud account, and then deploying services into it is very straightforward. It's really a matter of selecting where I want my services to go and then deploying them there.
I think if I could add on to that, I think that's a really key point, is that abstraction is really the power of this, that says once you do a BYOC, and for an organization that makes that decision, it's a security decision, it's a compliance decision, it's a financial decision, and they make that. But once they do that, an organization may be running multiple BYOCs. Mm-hmm. They may have different cloud providers and they're running 2 different BYOCs and some Aiven hosted. And it makes no difference. It's going to be transparent to the organization. Exactly. And that's what we were trying to get to, is if an organization decides to go BYOC, and even hypothetically one day they decided they wanted to stop doing BYOC and return to an Aiven hosted, it wouldn't make any difference to them. The developers now have a data platform of managed services with 4 nines of uptime, and that's all they need to know. They're able to use a best-of-breed set of services to get their initiatives done, and that's what they're focused on. So the fact that this underlying change, complexity, difference exists is irrelevant to the organization trying to deliver on its data initiatives, because that's what's important to them.
What does that look like when an organization is looking to go through the workflow at different levels, implementation, what someone at a CISO level would see versus a developer level?
I think at the end of the day, it doesn't and it shouldn't affect any of the decisions that they make. So a CISO or anybody who runs engineering or platform engineering, they're going to be looking at what their end goals are in mind. They're going to be looking at things like, are we able to maintain our security standards, our governance standards, our compliance standards? And the underlying, like where it's located, shouldn't make a difference. They want to be able to say, I've made a commitment to a particular cloud, I'm going to deploy there. My decision shouldn't really change in any significant way. Bring your own cloud doesn't force them to change. The nice thing it also does is it doesn't force their developers to make any changes as well. So the APIs that exist on the Aiven platform exist today. Terraform provider, Kubernetes operator, they all exist on the Aiven platform and within a bring your own cloud model as well. So there's really very little, if any, change. It really is about the implementation model. Okay. It's about how do I enable my organization to become efficient and cost-effective and still stay within the guardrails that I've set up for my organization. And Bring Your Own Cloud does that. It doesn't require compromises in any way.
Maybe if we have a look at it the other way around and say, what if I didn't have, a multi-cloud platform? What's happening now is I'm pushing decisions down. Now, all of a sudden, instead of a CISO making a decision once for the organization about how we're going to do something, now every developer has to worry that because they've gone into a proprietary cloud, how they operate in this cloud is different to how they operate in this cloud. So what I've done is I've moved a set of responsibilities and decisions and skills and requirements and training. I've moved it down through the organization, would be the opposite effect. by bringing it back to the platform and having consistency in a multi-cloud environment, I've removed the responsibility that, a developer has to know the differences of all of these things, as an organization has to traverse the multi-cloud gauntlet. Is now I'm able to bring a number of those things up through the organization, make decisions once, and now a developer has consistency.
Right.
I wanted to dive into something that you mentioned earlier, Stu, which was you touched on open source and how organizations are adopting more and more, because it's hard when you're very one vendor specific and the proprietary services that come out. You are putting a lot of time and investment into needing experts in that. So I just wanted to talk more about how open source technology on the platform at Aiven, what you're excited about, what's exciting about it, and how that's really helping organizations create a unified data platform strategy.
I'm going to say I'm really excited about the role of open source. If I go back a few years, being old like I am, open source really changed the industry completely. Like it was just a massive change when all of a sudden technology was available to so many more organizations, many smaller organizations that maybe weren't able to buy technology early on. But it was really in a world of self-managed, when people were self-managing them, everything themselves. And open source remained a self-managed thing. And today, startups today will often start with sort of self-managed open source. And at some point, if they're successful, they'll grow and they'll get to a point where they start and hit barriers. And I think for some time, there was somewhat of a conflict in the industry where, because everything cloud is a managed service that's provided for you, versus open source, which really required you to download, install it, manage it, secure it, patch it, upgrade it, do everything yourself. And there was somewhat of a conflict. It was literally one path or the other. And to me, the role of open source as we go forward was starting to end up in a very much a conflict between open source and cloud services. I think what we see today with open source really solving the multi-cloud problem that says, what I want to do is get access to common skills, common requirements, common technologies, and that reverting to open source as the way of doing that says open source provided as a managed service still gives me access to the largest pool of available skills. And a lot of it does come down to people. So if you can get access to a large pool of people, like the more proprietary somebody is, and we can all think of the most proprietary technology we can in our heads, to get an individual to do that technology is going to be very expensive and they're very rare. And if that individual leaves, my entire project is impacted. It could take me months to replace them. Whereas open source gives us access to this large pool of people that we've democratized the knowledge of these technologies, and they're not the domain of any one vendor, one cloud, etc. And so I think the role of open source now becomes very clear as part of this path that says, as open source gives us that ability to go multi-cloud, people, money, security, compliance, skills, training, all of the benefits that we see out of a platform based on open source starts to become very clear again. And that's what I'm excited, because to be honest, for a little while there, I was really struggling to see how the conflict between open source, self-managed and managed services as a cloud provider, how that was ever going to resolve. And I'm just so excited about where the path of open source is now, because it's become very clear.
I just wanted to capitalize on one item that Stu said around it really enabling the developer. When we look back, and just in my experience, working with companies who are at the initial steps of this, whether moving to cloud, and now as we consider like moving to AI and things like that, that the ability to bring developers along, to have the skill sets is such an important thing that they had to address then. Just organizational alignment and people readiness and skill set gaps and things like that. And open source really helps to remove some of that. If you've got developers who have kind of come down that maturity level, the way Stu described of self-managed and then moving into a more managed model, they still bring those skills with them. And all of the new applications, all the new workloads, the new ideas, that we don't have to go find people who find new people, more expensive people. You can work with the same developers, give them opportunities, and it's such an organizationally, it's such a positive thing to be able to move people, progress people within the organization, and really open source helps to enable that.
I used to be a recruiter in a past life, a long time ago, and one of the most costly things for companies is turning over a seat. And when that seat is very proprietary or very niche, it's even more expensive. So even from that, like,
Yeah.
more high level standpoint, it can really disrupt what's going on in a day to day.
And the time that you spend finding somebody for that empty seat can be 3 to 6 months, if not longer. Especially the more specialized they are, that's lost opportunity.
Yeah, it is. And the higher the level, I remember like it was 1 year recruiting cycles for very specialized high level talent. It takes a year or two for them to be like, hey, I'm not going to just jump ship.
Right.
It has to be the right decision. They have to be excited about the technology. So 100% agree on that side. We've been talking for a while, and I do have one last question for both of you. Is if you had a crystal ball in 1 to 2 years, what do you feel is the next feature people are going to be wanting?
To me, it has to be something related to like AI at scale. Today what we see are AI workloads are, the cloud providers have a pretty clear vision of what they want. They want to they want people to consume services and experiment. For many of the customers that we talk to, they're still very much in the, what do I do? I'm not quite sure what it means. But in a year or two, I think, you'll start to see the initial POCs start to pay off and good ideas. And the newest features, the newest capabilities will be around how does somebody like Aiven really help enable AI workloads at scale, and all of the elements that really need to exist, all the things that we bring to the table today from a platform perspective, we'll need to do that at a very amplified level. Because I think those use cases should be much more mature, even though it's a couple years down the line. They'll be mature enough where companies expect to deliver real value from them.
Yeah. And Stu?
I think from my crystal ball, it is the same thing. I think we're going to see the maturity of AI. I mean, today, a lot of AI is still R&D projects. People are very excited. There's lots of new technologies. I think as the maturity, we go through the hype curve on AI, we get to, the real reality as we move from R&D projects to much broader across the organization. But my crystal ball tells me that all of the initiatives that an organization are going to do are going to require data. We can focus on the AI piece of it, but there are many non-AI initiatives that are going to happen as well. Some of those are the technologies and the initiatives that we know about today, and some of them are going to come along. But what we do know is those new initiatives are going to need data. So whether it's AI and whether it's non-AI, but data-driven initiatives, the consistency of having a single platform and being able to deliver against that, I think is the piece that's really important to me. Because when organizations see AI in a bubble and say, I need to do all of this just for my AI, we end up with something that's useful to one piece, one bubble, and it gets back to multiple initiatives, right? As we think about, how does this all tie together? We're going to need all of our initiatives, both AI and non-AI, as it matures, as it grows. The things we know about today, the things we don't know about, they're going to need data. And that data, that consistent data platform, will always be the answer to how that's going to move forward.
And it's going to be a lot of data. So I just want to say a quick thank you as we wrap up here. It's been great talking with both of you, and I hope that I get to chat with you soon.
Thanks very much. It's been fun. It's been a good discussion. Really appreciate it.
All right. Great to talk to you as well. Thanks for having us.
Of course. Thanks for being here.
Okay, Jenki, can you tell me what were the 2 main topics that you covered and why they are interesting?
I really liked the bring your own cloud approach. I think it's super interesting. I've worked at a hyperscaler before. I worked at a different startup. And to be honest, I haven't heard of a solution where multiple cloud vendors can be used to build a solution on one platform. I just haven't seen it before in my career. So I thought diving into that with them was super fun.
Yeah, I believe it makes a lot of sense because BYOC is basically allowing people to run our stuff in their account.
Yeah.
Seems like, having the person that does all your job, but inside your house.
Yeah, I mean, essentially. And I think what was super interesting is just Bob dove into how they approach it from a product standpoint, and then Stu talking about it, and just organizations in general are thinking about how they look at security and compliance and how being able to use different vendors to meet compliance needs is really easy on one platform. And that's just different. And I think it's super exciting.
For companies that are both looking to have a wider set of options about deploying stuff, or companies that just want to use the latest and chainest tool that is available out there, sounds like the perfect solution for them.
Yeah, we know in this industry, people commit to a vendor and they have to use their spend. And Bob and Stu touched on that in depth, but that's a really important call out, I think, because it's sometimes that people are shy to pull the trigger, right? And they're like, how, like, I'm committing this spend over here, and how's that going to work for our organization? And they have budgets to meet. So knowing that there's an option where there's flexibility for them to think about a new solution, I just think it's something different that hasn't been an option.
Okay, apart from BYOC, that I believe it's more for companies having a commitment to a certain cloud vendor, what else out of the interview with Stu and Bob did you find interesting?
I found them diving into AI and how that plays a factor into organizations' data platform strategy really interesting, especially since organizations, a lot of them are in R&D phase, and they want to try with different vendors and different products, and being able to do that on one platform. Thinking about it from that standpoint was interesting to hear from Stu, especially since he's talking with so many teams across the APAC region.
That seems like a really good set of topics, and I can't wait to learn more about it. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome.